Those blasted Indian burial grounds. I used to find it amusing how people would often place the blame of a haunting on those evil Indian burial grounds. However, it has become so pervasive that it has begun to grate on me. By the amount of blame that goes to the sites, they must have covered 99% of the continent where the Europeans arrived, and everyone buried there seems to have been a mean old shaman with a chip on their shoulder. In reality, this blame exists as a catch-all for unexplained hauntings, as if one could actually explain them. It's a newly developed building, no one ever died there, weird happenings happening anyways, must be those Indians. I am an Ojibwe man myself, and I'm sorry, but my ancestors had better things to do than scare teenagers and steal keys. It's not that we do not believe in hauntings, we do, but they are not trivial things, and if someone happened to build on a sacred site, that would not in and of itself result in any haunting. Likewise, my culture did not stop evolving simply because the white man began colonizing the land. Believe it or not, we Indians actually exist in the modern world, outside of reservations and casinos no less. Sorry, we don't wear headdresses, so we can more easily be identified, but I'm tired of my culture being essentially seen on the same level as New Agers, alien abductees, and fairy folk. We exist in the real world. You can actually come and observe or join in, and if the mood takes you, our culture and practice. You can't verify that alien abduction or that Bigfoot sightings exist, but you can always head down to a powwow and enjoy the food and dancing. Our cultures have been so twisted and misappropriated that I can understand if you might find it difficult believing that, though. Our culture has experienced tragedies that would result in hauntings, though. You counter? You better believe we have. But again, that has nothing to do with our burial grounds. The victims of those atrocities would never make it there, not to mention most of them being ancient long before any of this occurred. And going back to the cultural misappropriation, I cannot express how saddened I am whenever anyone suggests to smudge with sage or other medicines. First off, smudging is done something for the purification of the living, not the dead. Secondly, medicines aren't magic. You don't simply burn some cheddar and get certain effects. Without respect for and generally participation in the culture, these rituals are absolutely devoid of meaning and power, and no, that nutty new ager that learned about this stuff from a genuine Indian shaman isn't the man to go to either. In fact, he's more apt to harm you, physically and spiritually, in the name of our cultures, and again, that's very sad. In short, please stop treating Indians as a boogeyman at a time. It's anachronistic, it's stereotypical, it's offensive, and it's outright lazy. My house is cursed. My family seems to always have ghost experiences or haunted houses. If this gets enough interest, I'll tell more stories of mine and my family's. A little backstory. My town has a lot of Indian burial grounds. I won't say where I am, but it's related to Utah and the Mormons. If you know it well, then you know the church didn't recognize the killings until recently. Anyways, I'd had a lot of experiences in my house. My sister has horrible feelings, but my parents don't believe us, until recently. They say our house is too new. For now, I'll just talk about my staircase, the hallway, and some of my room. My staircase seems to be the most active. For a long time, we didn't have electricity on the stairs, so it's been dark since. There's a giant mirror halfway up that covers most of the wall, and makes for a creepy way to go up and down the stairs. There's no windows nearby, and even if we turn on the hallway lights, it doesn't help a lot. Nothing really happens until my sister and I are home alone. Our dog Jessie will always stare up the stairs and refuse to go up unless everyone is up there. She used to sleep in a kennel near the door to the hallway and only went to the closet when she's been scared. Now she sleeps in there. It might all be a coincidence, but at this point, I don't know. I'll tell a recent story now, some happenings. Not my biggest experiences, but they definitely scared me. I'm not easy to scare. I'm a 6-foot male, 127 pounds. I love horror movies and have been in a couple fights. I was coming home from school. I still had all my stuff with me when I went up the stairs and into the hallway area. My room is at the hallway anyways. I was about to open the door to my room and suddenly, I felt as if someone was rushing me. There was no noise, but I fully expected to turn and see someone with a knife. But when I turned around, no one was there. I stayed in the room for the rest of the night. I've heard movement in rooms. During the winter time here, I thought someone had broken in because, well, there were crashes throughout the house and pounding. If I wanted to get out, I would have to run through the hallway and the staircase or jump off my roof. I ran outside in only a shirt and shorts. I ran out barefoot as well. I called my friend and my dad and asked if I should call the police, but my dad said to hold off. We do have people in the apartment basement downstairs. They weren't home at the time, though. This hasn't been the only time this has happened. Unfortunately, this has happened about 3 or 4 times. Doors opening at casino construction site. So, for the past 2 months, I've been working at night, 5 p.m. to midnight, at a casino construction site. I work in contracted security, and we only have 1 guard per shift. It's a decent site, with a decent size, with not much light around nighttime and surrounded by woods. So for the first 2 weeks, it was a bit creepy walking around, but eventually it was just clockwork. Up until recently, nothing out of the ordinary has happened. Until last week. I walked through the casino building once an hour, the first time checking all the doors to make sure they're shut to the best of their ability. They're just plywood on hinges with handles, and have no locking mechanism, except for 1 door at the front of the building, with a wooden bar in the door that slides to lock the door. So at around 7 p.m., I checked the front door with the locking bar and it was shut and locked. Around 10 p.m. that night, I was walking through the building and see this door wide open, with the locking bar slid as far over to keep the door unlocked. My first reaction was that someone had broken in and began a stronger search throughout the area. However, I didn't find anyone, didn't hear any type of human activity, and didn't notice any materials out of place or look like anything had been taken at all. Today, I began with the same routine. At around 7 p.m., I did my first walkthrough, checking all the doors, including the front door mentioned. 3 hours later, it is now 10 p.m., I walk past the door shut and locked, through a connector that leads to the hotel building. I walked out the opposite side of the hotel building, outside towards the front of the casino, and what do I see? The door wide open. Locking bar slid to be unlocked and no signs of anyone here, as I just walked through. The thought of casino and Indian burial grounds is starting to come to mind. There was articles online of tribes requesting the construction company to look for burial areas, in which the company said they found none, but it's safe to say I'm a little spooked at this point. Due to job security and safety of the construction site, I won't post the location, but I'll be working this site until at least October, so if anything else happens, I will update. Edit. After an hour sitting in the company vehicle after the second door encounter, the windshield wipers have turned on by themselves. This is a turn knob in a Jeep Cherokee. My hands and knees were nowhere near this fucking knob, let alone in a position to physically turn it clockwise to turn the wipers on. I live next door to an Indian burial ground. I've read some really interesting experiences from people in the subreddit, so I figured it's time to share my paranormal experiences. Around 14 years ago, when I was 6 years old, my parents unfortunately split up. It was really hard on the whole family, especially because me and my sister were so young at the time. My mom stayed in our home, and my dad moved out buying a nice townhouse that was around 20 to 30 minutes away. It wasn't long before my dad met my stepmom, and shortly after sold his place so they could buy a nice house with plenty of room for me, my sister, and 2 step-siblings. I guess this house used to be a care home for people with special needs. All the rooms had intercom systems placed so the residents could get help if needed. I was super excited to move in. That was until we first arrived at the house. I was quick to notice 2 doors down was a small fenced-off field with barbed wire and overgrown blackberry bushes all over the place. I asked my dad what was in there. He told me it was a First Nations graveyard that was sectioned off when our neighborhood was built 20 to 30 years ago. I instantly related what my dad told me with the Poltergeist movie I saw at my cousin's place. It sent chills down my spine. Anyways, nothing really happened for the first few months we lived in this house, other than just being a young kid scared of the dark. Once it hit the year mark, things started happening. I vividly remember the night like it was yesterday. It was around 9:30 p.m., and I was laying in bed half asleep when I noticed the figure of a boy in my doorway. He was bald and had what looked like a shirt on, but for some reason it didn't frighten me. I remember getting the feeling his name was Nathan. He gestured his hand for me to follow him, which I did. I followed right behind him all the way to the staircase, where I lost him. I walked upstairs where the rest of my family was watching TV. I asked, "Where's Nathan?" Obviously, everyone was confused because they had no idea what I was talking about. They shrugged it off, thinking I was just sleepwalking. I was only 8 years old, but it was so vivid. All the way up to when I asked them where Nathan went. Obviously, this could have easily been a simple case of sleepwalking, but it still freaks me out to this day. A few months later, it was 6 a.m., my dad had already left to work, and my step would leave the house to clean her office for the day, but was back within an hour to drive us to school. I woke up to her leaving right on time at 6. It was only me and my sister in the house. Her room was upstairs and mine was downstairs. My room was located right below the kitchen. We had got a Belgian Malinois puppy who had his kennel in the kitchen. About 15 minutes after my stepmom left, I heard a thump in the kitchen above, which sounds like boots. Our dog instantly started going off barking. My heart rate jacked up so high I felt like I was going to faint. The footsteps kept thudding along, slowly, until all of a sudden I heard a loud whimper from my dog and then silence. The footsteps again continued out of the kitchen and disappeared. I remember being in tears. I grabbed a baseball bat from under my bed and hid under the covers, ready to start swinging at anything coming into my door. It was dead silent until my stepmom came home. I rushed out of my room to her and told her what happened. Went upstairs to see the dog, and he was just sitting in the corner with a blank stare. She could tell I was really shook up over this. So she called my dad to see if it was maybe him, but he said he was already on the ferry, an hour and a half away for work. I have some more experiences that happened in this house, but this post is already quite long, so I'll cut it there.